Uh, what's the time now?
I don't know if it's still coming on Facebook.
What is that? Is it coming on Facebook?
Yeah, we are live.
Good.
We are live.
Okay, I think it's at 5:30. I think another minute or so. No.
Yeah. It's 8 o'clock. It's 5:30.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Good evening and good morning. Welcome everyone to a Facebook Live with the writer, columnist, and good friend P.A. Krishnan. We are going to be talking about the state of the wars that are going around the world in a very pivotal moment in U.S. Political history, where we have a presidential election going on, and how all of these impact each other, right? The wars around the world, particularly the Middle East, is affecting U.S. presidential election, and vice versa. Whoever gets elected will have an impact on what happens in the Middle East, and all of these are spinning out of control. And also between the largest democracy and the oldest democracy, respectively being India and the U.S., we also want to question what is the state of democracy. We see the rise of right-wing politics everywhere, including Germany recently. So we want to delve a little bit into all of that and give a coherent view for our viewers. Obviously, there are places where PAK has a different perspective from mine, and there are some areas where we will tend to agree a bit. So we hope to have a lively engagement. Welcome to the program, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. In fact, the pleasure should all be mine. I have been, dying to talk to someone who is aware of these things or who can discuss these things, in some detail. Many of my friends, of course, I have friends,
Mm-mm-mm.
who are good at this or good at that, but to discuss something in a holistic way, uh, you will have to search and find out friends. And I'm fortunate that you are one of them, and you're also, you're also willing to talk to me. There's another plus point. So I am more than thrilled to have this discussion with you.
Absolutely.
I There's one more thing. The discussion, has necessarily to be in English, because of the firstly because of the topics involved, and secondly because some of your and my viewers, may not know
Yeah, yeah,
Tamil that well. So that's the reason why we have this discussion in English. So my apologies to
the native.
Tamil friends. We would make it, we will not speak in Latin. We will try to speak in good and simple English if it is possible. Okay, I think we go
Absolutely.
ahead.
And I mean, several times I have used the quotes from, was it Yeats's Second Coming? Things fall apart, the center cannot hold.
Yeah,
Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. We literally are living in such a time now. Who would have thought that the American presidential election will see a former president indicted on 34 felony counts survive two assassination attempts, of which one almost
kill
injured.
him.
It injured him, but not fatally, though. And then we see a replacement of the presidential ticket, and then we see the Middle East, while it always between Israel and Palestinian areas, there have always been friction. Some minor scuffle would go on, but now it has blown out into a full-blown war that is radiating across the region, and it has now gone touched upon Lebanon and now directly with Iran. So this is probably after a very long time Israel and Iran are facing off each other directly, and how that can play out. And then in the far other side, there is Russia and the Ukraine war that is still raging on more than 2 years on. The Israel-Gaza war itself is now almost a year, and there is no
Yeah, October 7th. October 7th is the date.
yeah, and there
Yeah.
is no end in sight for both of these. And so, sir, let's start with Ukraine, right? So we don't want to relitigate the causes of the war. We did a program last year where we spoke about why they went to war. You had a different perspective, I had mine. And so we don't want to relitigate the cause of the war. The question is, what is Putin's end game here? What would be advantageous for Putin, or how would he like to bring the war to a close? Yeah, take it away from there.
Yeah, in fact, there are. It's quite difficult to predict that, but let me do that. Let me do that for you.
Yeah,
Putin, right from the beginning, the the Russians have been saying that their security interest has to be taken care of. So the Russian security interest will be taken care of only if the entire Donbas region and Kherson and Zaporozhye uh, are taken taken from Ukraine, or if the Russian language, they are liberated. They are liberated, or you can say from taken back from Ukraine, and they become part of Russia, because Russia has already declared them to be part of Russia, and there was some whatever you might say about the poll. There was some poll was some poll was also held in these places, but these areas, they are on the east of Ukraine. In fact, in all the places, the common factor is that they have Russian-speaking people in the majority in all these places, right from Crimea and Donbas region and Kherson and Zaporozhye. So once that Russian take these places, okay, which is likely to happen now because in the war, Ukraine is facing a big setback, and Russians are advancing in the east. Though Ukraine has taken a slice of the Kursk region of Russia, which is not going to change the course of the war in any case. So the once this happens, once the Russians take back Donbass, and if they take back Donbass, they might reach the east side of the Dnieper River. If they do that, then there is a likelihood of um, the war coming to an end, or there's a likelihood of some negotiations, uh, taking place. But this is a big but. The
yeah,
if this is the Russians, this is how the Russians view things. From the Ukraine's point of view, this will be the death knell of Zelensky and the nationalists who control the Ukrainian politics now. In Ukraine, election is is overdue, and this guy is now he's ruling Ukraine. Is even his rule is extra constitutional, because if Ukraine's constitution doesn't envisage any president continuing beyond this period, which he is doing, and there's no such thing as martial law. Under martial law, you could continue. So even his continuance is not legally valid, but the Western powers are no. In everyone all over the world, the people are all over the world, the governments are prepared to overlook this. So once this happens, uh, the uh, the Zelensky's future and the nationalist future will be on the block. And what is more important is that this will also mean a major failure on the part of the NATO. Okay, that's because NATO entered the war on two or three premises. In fact, three premises. Number one is that they thought Russia to be a weak economy. There is, as some of one of the U.S. senators said, no, is a gas station masquerading as a country. Okay, that's a weak economy, and they thought that the sanctions will cripple Russian's economy, and there will be a change of regime in Russia, and Russians, their technologically their weapons and their weapons, were primitive, and that army was not that great. On these major assumptions, they entered this war.
Very true.
And Russia, they are proving them wrong. Russian economy is now become stronger. Russian people are, they say that they're living much better than what they were doing before the war. I don't know how long this will continue, but all these things are are debate. But what will happen is it will be a major setback for the NATO. And the other important question is, even if Russia takes this region, they rump Ukraine, whatever left of Ukraine, whether it would be allowed to join the NATO is also a question that has to be discussed. So the Russia will not like the rump also to join NATO. They want a demilitarized Ukraine. In fact, that's the reason, denazification. That's what Putin says. So the future is still is very very.
Essentially,
Russia wins the
so if what you're saying can be summed up, it comes down to at least 2 or 3 key points, right? One, Russia retains the Donbas region, and two, Ukraine, in whatever shape or form, does not join NATO. These are the two things that could bring the war to a close. But some interesting happenings happened ever since we talked last time on the Ukraine war, like the Wagner mercenary army revolt, and what is now perceived as possibly the killing of Prigozhin. And for the first time, I'd say possibly after Second World War, when Hitler's army entered Russian territory, for the first time, there has been a successful incursion into Russian soil by the Ukrainian army, right? And which is where, and particularly because the Prigozhin revolt was short-lived, it's completely tamped down, it's stamped out. It's done. There's nothing much to discuss on the Prigozhin, though it showed a certain soft underbelly for Russia. The other key thing is now Putin is threatening because it is the West that is supplying Ukraine. He's like, if Ukraine crosses into Russian soil, I will go after Western interests. Essentially, what will become a direct conflict between the West and Russia. How do you see that play out? It almost seems unfair that while Russia retains the absolute right to bomb anything and everything in Ukraine, any retaliation by Ukraine into Russian airspace or soil is seen as a Western attack on Russia.
No. See, the thing is, that's why you should go into the basics of this. Ukraine, the war is not being fought by Ukraine. Ukraine is a proxy. The war is being fought by the NATO forces. The United States, it gives the complete intelligence information for Ukraine, comes from both US and the other NATO forces, especially Britain. Okay. And most of the attacks on Russia have been done with the blessings of US and Britain. In fact, the major actually the persons who are right at right on the scene could be from the UK. Okay, so to say that the Western powers are not involved in this war may not be right. Okay, that's number one.
No, I didn't say that they are not involved. The West is supplying Ukraine. There is no question about it.
Yes, West is supplying.
And the West is giving them logistical help, right?
Not only,
Helping.
not only, yeah, not only logistic. They are giving military help, not only logistical help.
When I said
They are
logistic,
giving
that includes
regular,
military help with the
yeah,
targets and other stuff.
their
So
military help, everything, is
let's
being
not
given.
ignore. Let's not ignore the fact that Russia has its own allies in the form of China and Russia and
Yes,
India,
yes, yes, yes,
and
yes.
India too. Because
Yeah.
like you raised a very good point. I'll address this a little bit about the fact that the sanctions failed. Very true. You said about the key assumptions about the war, right? You are very correct on that. One, they thought that the sanctions. We saw a historic flight of Western companies under the sanctions, not of their own volition, whether it is the financial companies or technology companies, they were all made to close their shop in Russia, which the Western powers thought will bring Russia to its heel. Particularly removing all the job opportunities and everything like McDonald's closing and every financial conglomerate closing in Russia. This was supposed to bring Russian economy down and thereby Russia to the heel. That was the assumption. But then, of course, Russia, as we know, is a gas station, which it is using to its full advantage, which is fine, right? I mean, in a war, they use what they can and we use what we can. That's fair enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And India very wisely played into this. India used this opportunity to get cheap oil from Russia, which is perfectly fine from an Indian perspective. They are using a global conflict to their advantage to address energy
Help us.
shortfall in
Exactly.
the country, and also keeping Russia in the same side while playing up the newfound love for US. While India has never been a inimical state to the US, but this the bonhomie that is today is at a different level with the US. Now they're using the Ukraine war to balance that a little bit, and China is another thing that is playing along with Russia in a kind of an axis manner, if you can call it that, right? So Russia has its allies, the Ukraine has its allies. So it's not like Ukraine is a proxy here. Ukraine has its allies, Russia has its allies.
No, 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 no. So the thing is,
What I'm only confessing in what
it's
you're
not,
saying is
no,
the
it's
choice
not
of the
both
word.
Russia, both China.
Let me add one sentence and then give it back to you.
Okay.
Ukraine is not to the West a proxy, as we say, like Hamas and Hezbollah are a proxy to the Iran, right? So we can't term Ukraine a proxy in the same manner as we say Hamas and Hezbollah are proxies to Iran. I'm just saying Ukraine as a sovereign country has allies in its survival.
I beg to differ. I beg to differ.
Of course.
Ukraine was a sovereign country until this war started. Now Ukraine subsists only on Western help. Okay, his economy, 80% of his resources are gone, and his population has depleted, and his entire army and the entire civil service is being funded by the by the US government. The money they give, is how many, 200 billion or 300. Nobody knows. There's not even an audit. What is it? How much money is uh, going to Ukraine? So to say that Ukraine is a sovereign country may not be. Not it was a sovereign country before this war, but is no longer so. From 2014 onwards, Ukraine is slowly losing its sovereignty. Now it is only a sovereign state.
Would you call the British support to Poland in 1939 made
Yeah.
Poland a proxy in the war?
No, no. Poland, how is it? But there are two different issues. There are two different issues.
I mean,
Poland was
it's
a
the same
sovereign
thing, right?
country.
Poland, a sovereign country, is
No,
being
then there is a
invaded by
war. In
Germany.
fact, there is a regular war. See,
No,
before
the war gets
1930,
declared only afterwards,
before
right?
no,
See, what
please,
we call as a war or
see,
what we call a battle is all semantics.
no, in
Germany,
1939,
Germany invaded Poland.
there was a treaty. There was a treaty between these two countries, and Britain very clearly said that if Germany invades Poland, we will come to your rescue.
I mean, it's the
That was
same
what
thing
happened.
here, right?
That was what happened.
Putin knew that if he went into Ukraine, the West is going to stand by Ukraine.
No, no,
Was a
he is
known
prepared to
fact.
take the risk. He was prepared to take the risk. See, the thing is, as he said, from his point of view,
I'm
as
only
he said,
contesting your
it
choice
was
of
an
word on.
existential threat.
I'm only contesting your choice of word as proxy. Proxy
So it
is
is. No, today it is a proxy. So
in fact,
yesterday it may not be. Today it certainly is,
when we say proxy, what we are saying is, like say Iran today does not
See,
own up to
why,
this.
let me see what I mean by proxy. Ukraine is fighting NATO's war with Russia. They supply the manpower, and the weapons and other sources are supplied by the West. This is what I mean by proxy. You can, if the word proxy is not acceptable to you, I am fine with it. When I say proxy, I mean only this. Ukraine is fighting this war on behalf of NATO by sacrificing his own
So would you
youngsters.
say then that Israel is fighting the war on behalf of US, which is what many claim actually?
Again, come again.
Would you say by the same analogy that Israel is fighting the
No, 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 it's not. It's not. Israel is not listening to the US. Israel is, in fact, our entire problem is whatever Biden says, Israel is not listening. That's a major problem. Netanyahu acts independently. That's not the case with Ukraine.
See, again?
Okay,
There
both
are
the things, see, there's a different orders. Both the things. See, Israel is also dependent on the US. But what is the order of dependence? Okay, this is Ukraine's dependence on NATO and the US and Britain is of a different order. Okay,
no.
that
Israel
we
is
should not
completely
mistake.
dependent on Israel is
No, here,
completely dependent on
no,
US.
no. Here, Ukraine. See, in Ukraine is on the losing side. Okay, Israel is as of date, Israel is not on the losing side. Israel is an upper hand now. So it's not fighting a proxy war. Israel is not fighting a proxy war. In fact, Israel has, of course, its own weapons, its own systems, everything is there. But as far as Ukraine is concerned,
Much of which
it
was
is
built
it
with
is
the US
fighting it is
blessings.
fighting war of
Remember, much
NATO.
of what we see in Israel is courtesy the US.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that I agree. That I agree.
Anyway, let's move on
Every
from
war,
the proxy
I
issue.
entirely agree with you that from 1945 onwards, every war that has taken place in the world was courtesy United States. I agree.
Of course, you would agree with that part. Ignoring the fact that somebody else was the instigator or agent provocator.
So the US, of course, US is there everywhere. No, it's like the earlier also
I
I
mean,
said,
Russia is in Syria,
like a
Russia is in
Scarlet Pimpernel
Saudi.
is there here,
Look,
there, and everywhere. No, it's
look,
there everywhere.
the world is a
So,
stage between the two powers even today. Let's just agree on
yeah,
that.
maybe, yeah. That's one of the reasons why
I mean,
yeah.
Bashar Assad would not be possible without Russian help.
Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
So the same
exactly.
is Zelensky is not possible without Russia, with the
So,
NATO's help.
so on Ukraine front,
Is not possible. Yeah, that I
on
agree. That I have no problem at all.
on
I have no problem at all
on
with
the
agreeing with
Ukraine
you.
front, at
So
least,
now we are coming into the Ukraine's point of view. Finally, we will, otherwise discussions, going somewhere else.
yeah.
Finally, the red lines, not to say, if you read, the red lines are all the creations of the Western media. Russia hasn't set any red line. Only now they are saying this. Only now they are saying, when the long range weapons will be given to Ukraine, they are saying this. That you will be directly involved in this war. Then the consequences you will have to face. This Russia has been saying. Today they have said very, very clearly. Okay, and they have also tweaked their nuclear doctrine, to address the present conditions which Russia find itself to be in. Okay, so these are the two changes. How the West is going to accept it, the West is going to counter it, remains to be seen. But in but how, as things stand now, most of the European countries are taking a step back. Okay, even the US government has taken a step back, excepting the idiots in the Britain. Okay, see, everybody is looking at the danger that might ensue, the catastrophe that might ensue if Russia is pushed to a corner. Okay, that everyone understands, that every major power in the world understand that. So I think better sense will prevail, and this war should come to an end. So more than anything else, I really, as a human being, I feel for the ordinary people of Ukraine, the young boys and girls who die there, for no rhyme or reason. Okay, it happens to Russian young boys and girls also, but Ukraine, many youngsters have
Really,
given their life. Which is bad. Every war is bad, and this war is bad. This war has to come to an end. I have absolutely no doubt about it. I am not pleased. I am not supporting Putin at all in this. Putin. I am not saying that Putin is right or Putin is wrong. I am not saying that. But things are happening in this way. Okay,
yeah,
and
yeah.
nobody. See the entire in a war like this, right and wrong. They take a back seat. The events
Yeah,
they take. They assume their
absolutely
own.
agree.
Yeah,
Absolutely agree.
their
And
own logic, and that logic becomes inexorable. So that's a danger. There's a danger in such wars. First World War also happened the same way.
yeah,
The Second World War also, has happened the same way. Now we should not. We are staring at a third World War, and
well,
I think we
uh,
should pray to
yeah.
whoever is pray to Allah or whoever it is that.
And that is where I want to take the discussion to the next real hot area, Israel
Yeah.
and the Middle East conflict. The Middle East conflict is now close to a year. Come next week, we'll be having the first anniversary of Hamas's terrorist attack. And I want to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization that launched a murderous assault on Israel, fully aware of the consequences to a great extent, even what to say. They expected this consequence and they wanted this. This is what has come out from all the analysis so far. Hamas has put Israel exactly where Hamas wanted Israel to be. Between Netanyahu and Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, uh, neither of them care for the ordinary Palestinians. This is the blunt
Or
fact.
Israel.
Hamas has no care about Palestinian lives. It's almost like how LTTE had no concern for Tamil lives while claiming to fight on their behalf, right? I see a lot of parallels with what happened in 2009 and how LTTE conducted itself with the Tamils, respectively. Uh, and we are seeing that the conflict is widening. And and on this one, because this is the first time I'm actually talking about, and we are actually talking about Israel, right? The Middle East conflict. Uh, I have to set some context, and you give yours following that. We have to remember that Hamas launched the attack just when Israel was negotiating an agreement with Saudi Arabia. Essentially, the land that controls the holiest shrines of Islam was ready to recognize Israel as a state and normalize relationships. It is at that stage, because that gives the ultimate recognition for Israel in the Middle East region. And Palestinian cause was not just in the back burner in the Muslim countries, whether it is Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iraq. Palestinian cause was put far behind because they were all dealing with local issues and they wanted to normalize relationships with Israel. And you and probably some viewers know the tangled history of how many of these Muslim countries use the Palestinian cause more as a stick to beat Israel with than any honest interest in Palestinian cause. There is a very tangled relationship between Palestinian leadership going back to the days of Yasser Arafat and many of these Muslim countries' leaders, like notably in Jordan. We know that they were literally expelled out of Jordan after whatever Arafat attempted there, right? So Hamas launched a terrorist attack simply because he saw that Israel was making peace around the neighborhood and getting accepted as a nation state. And then he knew, having launched the attack, he knew that, and these are statements borne out by Hamas operatives. And they clearly say that we expected Israel to attack Gaza with a brute force, cause a humanitarian disaster, and use the humanitarian disaster then to hold Israel to account in public. And some of the things that I still do not understand about the Israel conflict is how the world came to the streets to protest against it. On any given day, whether it is Syria, Yemen, and now Ukraine Wall Street Journal says close to 1 million people have either been killed or wounded in the Ukraine-Russia war on both sides. The total casualties is close to 1 million. In Gaza, as horrific as the destruction is, 30,000, 40,000, keep it 100,000. And yes, there are women and children more. All of these things are spoken about every war. Any loss of life is regrettable, anything is condemnable, and both sides have been gone at it. Hamas has largely survived in Gaza despite this relentless bombing, which shows that Hamas had fortified itself better than protecting its people. Literally, Hamas ensured that Hamas survives, but Palestine doesn't. That's how they.
Yeah, no, it's slightly more complicated than that. Anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So, with this backdrop, let's talk about the Israel conflict, and which I think is where, though we often say Third World War quite easily, and people treat it as exaggerated fear or hyperbole, but for once, we are looking at a possibility that, whether it comes to the level of Third World War or not, that this is a conflict that can spin out of control, drawing a lot more nations into the spiral and much bigger conflict. So with that, I'll give to you.
Yeah, in fact, if you look back, if you look back during the 30s of the last century, there was, the Italy invaded Abyssinia, which was Ethiopia. Then there was a civil war in Spain, where both the Western countries and the then Soviet Union, they participated. Okay, and Japan, more than that, Japan, they invaded China and started killing people left, right, and center. And of course, Hitler, anyway, he occupied Saarland, then he occupied uh, Munich Pact, he occupied Sudetenland, then he
Yeah.
gobbled up, Czechoslovakia itself, and finally he pounced on Poland. The Second World War happened. Okay, so the Third World War doesn't happen, over a day or two.
Yes.
It rolls on and on and on, and one fine morning, the world finds itself in a situation of war. So here, during the last few years, in fact, this is what is happening all over the world. There are flashpoints, and of course, flashpoint. Already there are wars happening in Ukraine, and there's a war now is happening in the Middle East, and there is likelihood of a war happening in the Taiwan, in the Taiwan region. That's also possible. Or if not today, tomorrow it might happen. So when all this is happen, everyone has to take a side, and the outcome could be, it should not be, but it could be another world war. But there's a huge difference between what happened in 1939 and what is going to happen now. Most of the powers, who are involved in this sordid game are 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 having huge nuclear arsenal. Okay,
Mm,
and
mm.
these guys are very glibly talking about the tactical nuclear weapon, which will you know its impact will not be that big. It will only in that area and things like this.
No.
But things may not stop at tactical nuclear weapon. So it is in the interest of mankind. It is in the interest of the world that these idiots, these guys, they think twice. They hasten, they go move slowly, so that the world doesn't find itself in a third world war like situation. Okay, this I think you will agree with me on this.
Yeah,
This is a
yeah,
general.
yeah.
Okay. Now let us come to the
On that one, I'll give a different. You're exactly right on this glib talk, as you said,
okay.
about the use of tactical nuclear weapons, right? And
Yeah.
where people say that cooler heads will prevail soon after, or that the damage. There is this scene in this movie, 13 Days, about the Cuban Missile Crisis,
Okay.
where Dean Acheson, the former Secretary of State, will be giving options to President Kennedy. Kennedy will be asking him, you are an old hand in this, you are an old veteran in this. How do you think we should handle? Oh, we invade Cuba, and then they will invade in Berlin. They will cross the Russia will invade via West East Berlin, and they will use nuclear weapons, and we will use nuclear weapons. And by the time we go to Moscow, things will stop. Cooler heads will prevail. And then Kennedy will say, after everybody is sent out to his to Bobby Kennedy and his press secretary, he'll say, "What is this guy talking? He's talking like people will move in predictable chess moves, right? And that you could control everything in an orchestrated manner. Yeah,
Yeah.
how will cooler heads ever prevail?" And then he will cite Barbara Tuchman's classic "Guns of August." Yeah, this is how nations get into war, thinking, "I will do this, the other side will do that. I will respond like this, they will respond like that," as if it is
Yeah.
all predetermined. But
Exactly. Things don't move that way. Yeah, it's quite difficult. It's not a game of chess.
it's not a
It's
game of
entirely
chess, and it's not deterministic, right? And we don't know exactly how the other side would react. And
exactly.
we are dealing with particularly Iran in this tangle. How do you see
Exactly.
that?
The variables are so many. I agree with you. I agree with you on that. Now coming to Israel, I entirely agree with you that the attack of Hamas on 7th October 2023 uh, is an act of was an act of terror. Absolutely no doubt about it. And the hostage taking is it is criminal. And there are some of the hostages. I don't know how many of them are still living. Okay, they
Mhm.
should be released forthwith. I absolutely no quarrels on that. It has to be there. But as I am sure you will agree with me, even the United States government also says that the Israel reaction is now things have gone, you know,
Yeah,
too
yeah.
far now. Okay, there is a boundary to all these things, even to acts of evil. Okay, there are boundaries. Okay, I think Israel has crossed that boundary long ago. Even in Gaza, they have crossed that boundary long ago. Again, I am not going whether they are right or wrong. The logic part of it is something else.
Mhm.
We should not. We can discuss till the cows come home. But what is happening is that this is creating a huge problem all over the world. Now, what is happening in Lebanon? See, the if Israel is mad, those guys are madder. The Hamas guys, the
Mhm.
Sunni and the Hezbollah guys. Your Houthis here from Yemen. They are attacking. They have already attacked. They already attacked a British tanker and destroyed it.
Mhm.
Okay, they have also attacked the American base now, and they also fired a rocket into Israel.
Mhm.
Okay, and the Hezbollah guys from Lebanon, they are attacking northern Israel. See, one thing which most people do not know, even if they know, I want to emphasize the the attack on northern Israel. Is a very very serious thing for Israel in the long run. Okay, the northern Israel is a beautiful place. You must have full of lakes and things like this.
Mhm.
It's the heart of Israel. The Tiberias and the Sea of Galilee is there, and all those places. River Jordan comes, and all
Mhm.
those places. It is the cultural and the historic center of other than Jerusalem of Israel. And many people live there. Now, most of them have become refugees there. People don't talk about this.
Yeah,
Most of
yeah.
the cities in northern Israel, they have become deserted, and people have moved southwards. Most of the Israelis have moved southwards. Many of them have gone to United States. I don't know the figures actually, but this
Mm.
is what is happening. That's number one. Number two, Israel economy also cannot, sustain this war for a long time. So it is not in Israel's interest to continue this war. I don't know why it is happening. The based on
This
prestige.
is
I don't know why. It is an act of harakiri. Is the act of committing suicide. Both parties. Both. I am not.
yeah, and this is where the unique, like what to say, the person most important to be talked about is Netanyahu.
Exactly.
Prior to the attack of Hamas, Netanyahu's political life was hanging by a thread due to the Supreme Court rulings and the protests within
Exactly.
Israel.
Now he is the most admired character
The,
in
the,
Israel.
the attack of Hamas,
Yeah.
and
I
this
agree.
is where Sinwar is playing a very different game than that is acknowledged or given credit. Right? Hamas is trying to sever. He now made it impossible for any Muslim country there to make peace with Israel. That's impossible now. For Saudi to even put it back on the table is impossible.
No, but Saudi and Gulf are still, they are still playing
Yeah,
that
but
game with
they're doing it in the back.
skillfully.
What they were doing
Yeah,
above the table has now gone back to behind the
yeah,
screen.
that's fine. But which they have been doing in the earlier times.
And he knew that Netanyahu, who is battling for political survival, will use this in order to launch a merciless war and have an attrition that will put Israel in a bad place globally. But internally, Netanyahu will have a lifeline. So Hamas probably wants Netanyahu to continue more than Israel wants Netanyahu to continue. And there is so much of dissent within Netanyahu's cabinet and military leadership about some of the objectives, like killing of Nasrallah. While not many mourn the killing, the question is, what have you achieved by it?
Yeah, now they killed the other leader also, if I am not mistaken. They killed.
So, yes, now they have probably killed the other guy who took his place
Yeah,
also.
yeah,
So, the
yeah.
question is, while these things are okay, all right, you did this, but what is your end game here? It's all about the end game, right? How do you want to end the war? Which is why historians who look at wars wonder at how wars bleed into one after another, right? Because people don't know how to end a war. Ending a war
See,
requires a lot of
yeah,
statesmanship and
the momentum, a war, gains, uh, is not, is generally, many times it's not controllable. His inertia is quite, quite heavy. So it's quite difficult to end a war. I agree with you. Though you might like to end a war, and it's quite difficult to end
and
a war. But in this
now
case, yeah,
Iran
please.
has directly entered the war while they were using proxies with Hamas and Hezbollah, which were Iranian proxies.
Yeah.
And so far, Iran was doing a shadow boxing, and now it is directly between Iran and
Yeah,
Israel.
but there is a history to it. You kill the leader in Tehran. You kill the Hamas leader in Tehran. Israel killed the Hamas leader in Iran. And no sovereign country will take it lightly. That's not going to happen. So
But
Iran is not a
let's
Iran
not
is not a
let's not give an excuse like that, because remember, India killed a Sikh in U.S. soil, in Canadian soil,
which thing.
a Sikh Khalistani proponent.
There's investigations going on. How do you
Yeah,
say
but
India is doing?
yeah. We all know that right now, pretty much the intelligence
Yeah, but
agencies agree
that's
that
not
it
a,
was.
here. See, the thing is, but Israel
So,
has
by that
acknowledged they
token,
killed them.
Canada should actually be launching a military operation against India.
Yeah, let them do it. Yeah, he's right. He's right. You can do it. So
Right?
just because India does something, it doesn't become right.
Yeah,
It doesn't become right. It doesn't
just
become right.
saying.
Even if India does it, it doesn't become right. You don't do that, especially in a country like. And again, India, yeah, that leader is in another country. Is another
Yeah,
country,
again,
and
the
you killed
point
him.
is you can
And
kill some
now,
of these people, but to what end and what are the repercussions? Is it
yeah,
worth
but
the
Israel,
repercussions?
no, but Iran knows now. Iran knows uh, the repercussions, what is happening, and Iran is prepared to face it. That they've said it very, very clearly. Now, if Israel attacks Iran, uh, but the great Trump has said that you should go for the
Nuclear.
Iran nuclear establishments. I don't know how this is going to happen, but if that happens, Iran also will retaliate. Iran has, of course, lots of Iran can bring. People don't realize Iran. If Iran attacks the Hormuz or the state of Hormuz or this thing, the entire oil supply to the world will come to a halt. Okay, that can be done by Iran. Okay, and the Houthis are also there. They are the jokers in the pack. They can
Mm.
also create huge damage, especially to the supply of oil to the world.
That's right.
So it is this war is if this war continues, the world will suffer. The entire world will suffer. It's not only Israel and Iran who are going to suffer, but the entire world is likely to suffer. But how this war is going to
Everyone is wondering what is Netanyahu trying to achieve with any of this, right? And there
yeah,
is a humanitarian cost.
Biden, I think even Biden is wondering about that.
Yes, Biden seems to have lost his grip with Israel, and we'll address that a little bit when we talk about the U.S. politics. But from the Indian perspective, what do you see India's role? Because India is
Yeah,
trying to
yeah.
play.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
India is trying to play a global peacemaker or somebody who is in the stage having some clout. So
No, our
between the Ukraine war and the happenings in Middle East, how do you see India's foreign policy establishment handle these conflicts and what they're trying to do?
like, so far, they have handled the conflict quite skillfully, I should say. The Ukraine conflict, they have handled it quite skillfully. Okay, though they are making routine noises that will be negotiating, and even Zelensky also says, the peace conference could take place in India and things, which is not going to happen anyway. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but still, the India is making right noises as far as the Ukraine Russia war is concerned.
Certainly,
But
they played the
but in
Ukraine
the
war to their
let-
advantage.
okay,
Certainly, India played the Ukraine war to their advantage by taking advantage of cheap oil.
exactly. But even that is not that's not being taken as a huge crime by the West and as well
Yes,
as
yes,
by
yes.
Ukraine. No, that's a diplomatic victory for India. That's a diplomatic victory for India. But as far as India is in the Ukraine war is concerned, India's role will be extremely limited. Both the sides are not going to listen to India. Whatever India might say, stop the war. They are not going to stop the war. Okay.
Mm.
Finally, when they decide to stop the war, they want a place where such things will take place. So India might be chosen as a place where the negotiation could take place. We don't know the Israel, the Ukraine war. But
Yeah,
as far as Iran is concerned, India has made it very, very clear, okay, by its acts, that it leans more towards Israel than towards Iran.
mm,
India has made it quite clear. Though our foreign minister keeps uh, saying that ours is a multi-vector policy, and he
mm.
has also said that we will negotiate, we will try to be the peacemaker between Iran and Israel.
That's right.
But we all know that India is nowadays is more pro-Israel than pro-Iran
Mm,
due to global circumstances, because India needs Saudi Arabia's help, India needs the Gulf states help.
mm, mm,
Okay, so these countries are at loggerheads with Iran. Okay, so India has to play this in a very, very carefully. So
mm.
far, they have been playing this game very, very carefully, very skillfully and carefully. I have absolutely no doubt about it. But when the actual war takes place, India has to take a stand. Okay, if India takes a blatantly pro-Israel stand, it will even Saudi Arabia or Gulf state may not be able to take a blatantly pro-Israel stand if a war takes place now. Okay, though they
That's
are pro-Israelis, They can't take an open stand like that. Okay, Egypt, you take Egypt, country like Egypt, they can take such a stand now. So India also will not be able to take such a stand. If it does take such a stand, then it will affect India relationship with all these countries. Okay, and it has got its own. Then things will follow. We should not. There's no point in going into that. So India is in a very very delicate situation now in this as far as this war is concerned, and the other thing is Iran and China. They are quite close. Okay, there's
Mhm.
another sore point for India.
Mm-mm.
So Iran, China, they are close. So India has to play this game very, very skillfully. So far, it has been playing this game skillfully. I only hope that they'll continue to play this game skillfully till the war comes to an end, till the crisis, not a war, till the crisis comes to an end. That's what I can say.
And one point
It's
that you
quite
said
quite
is,
tough. It's quite tough for India.
and one point that you said was beautiful, because where you said, like, though India is buying oil cheap from Russia, the West and particularly the US is actually turning a blind eye to it,
Exactly.
because it is helping Russia circumvent the sanctions, but US is turning a blind eye to it because the US would like to have a cordial relationship with India due to the China angle. So
Exactly. Yeah,
uh,
exactly. China,
it,
exactly.
it is so.
So the corollary is also true. So that's why India cannot, even if India wants to move close to China, okay,
Yeah.
India wants to, like the BRICS during the BRICS conference, it will be very very difficult for India to do it because of its relationship with the United States, which is quite warm now. So it is quite complicated. The entire thing is quite
And it is
complicated.
interesting, and
Yeah.
you will probably appreciate this even more than many people. For all the bluster of the Modi policy that seems to say the Nehruvian era was showing a head here and a tail there, trying to placate everyone, we find that Modi's foreign policy, to a large extent, there are key differences. There is a very significant shift on the philosophy of foreign policy. We'll come to that sometime later. But they are hewing close to how Nehru was juggling the global conflicts.
Exactly.
This
See,
is a,
there's a crucial difference. There's a crucial difference here. During Nehru's time, India
yeah,
was not an economically very powerful country. Okay, India was a very very weak country. The world listened to Jawaharlal Nehru because of his prestige, because
yeah.
of his pristine record, because of his anti-colonial record, and they felt that this man, he talks, they felt that this man would talk sense.
Hmm.
So the non-aligned movement was by and large successful. The world, the Western powers and everything, they accepted or they tolerated, not accepted, they tolerated it because of the the prestige of Jawaharlal Nehru and his track record as a freedom fighter, as an anti-colonial fighter. Okay, that everyone recognizes. Today, that's not the case. Today, India is able to play this game because of his market, because of his economic clout which
Hmm.
it carries in the world. So that's the difference. That's a basic difference. It's not because of personality, but the earlier the world supported India because of the personality of Jawaharlal Nehru. Today, the world try to listen to India because of his economic might, economic power. That's the difference.
Yeah. And so now let's shift a little bit towards the US presidential election.
Yeah.
And here probably I'll weigh in a little bit more since I happen to be here and hugely
Yeah,
interested.
I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, okay. Yeah, in fact,
I'm sure you
that's
are.
your good area.
We
I will
are
give you background.
living through. I've been in this country for 26 years now, so that's my direct experience of democracy in the country. And then there is history that we read about and that gets spoken about, right? So essentially, it's close to a 200-year electoral history we are talking about, or more than 200 years. This is singularly the most spectacular election that we have ever seen. even going by history, forget about what we see in our lifetime and what we see, right? And you may have seen, obviously, you would have been a witness to other events that we speak about, like, say, 1968, when Lyndon Johnson said that he will not run for the presidency.
Yeah,
He said, I will not accept my party's nomination because the Vietnam War was going bad. And he said that you would have witnessed, it was 4 years before my birth, and you would have certainly witnessed that time when a sitting president said that he will not contest. But going further, right, at least he was a sitting president during the primary process. He said, I am not contesting anymore. And Bobby Kennedy was the rising star. And then Bobby Kennedy gets assassinated, right? And then happens the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago, where it is complete bedlam, it is riots, and eventually Nixon comes to power in 68, right? Whereas now we see that the primaries are closed, and then the sitting president removes himself from the nomination, and immediately, you could call it coronation, you could call it what you will, Kamala Harris becomes the nominee, and ratified in a convention, of course. And now we are facing this election against a candidate. Usually, when presidents lose an election, like, say, George H.W. Bush, for example, when he lost in 92, he was a one-term president. He lost in 1992, and until now, other than possibly the exception of Adlai Stevenson, no presidential candidate who has lost an election has contested again. Adlai Stevenson, you may remember, contested back to back. And he lost both times. I think he was the only candidate who, after losing a presidential election, was again nominated.
Exactly.
Mitt Romney, when he ran in 2012, he made this point. He said, America treats political losers very badly.
Yeah, but Adlai Stevenson was a great personality, no? You see, Adlai Stevenson was
otherwise
also was a great personality.
Yeah. But generally, and Romney's point was, American politics does not treat losers very well. I mean, look at Hillary Clinton or Al Gore. Al Gore actually won the popular vote. He lost the election by 500 votes. But when time came for the next election, Al Gore was not even in the contention. And Hillary Clinton lost very narrowly, and her popular vote is 3 million more than Trump. And she is not even in the running for the next time, whereas Trump, this is so bizarre that Trump is the only candidate, a guy who never won the popular vote twice, and he lost the popular vote by millions, facing a 34 felony indictment and having tried to usurp the democracy of the US. He is now possibly again the next president.
Yeah.
Right?
I want to say one thing. There is a play, I think, is Major Barbara, I think, by Bernard Shaw, where the almond industry, I think, her daughter says, my father's company, he runs the almond industry. Do you know what his motto is? It's shameless. Says, So Trump's motto is is shameless. He doesn't believe in any of the democratic norms, which is one of the reasons why the Hindutva guys like him very much. Because they are also shameless guys.
The problem is not what Trump believes or Trump doesn't believe. The problem is there are voters willing to support him.
Exactly. I'm coming to that. Yeah.
So
white working class is overwhelmingly is going to vote for Trump. I'm 100% sure the white working class all over the United States, even in democratic states, they will vote for Trump. They may not vote for for Kamala Harris. I don't know. You may know better.
Yes, so there is a considerable number of the white working class that he draws, cutting across party lines.
Exactly.
Which is how he won in 2016, particularly.
Now it'll be even more now. It'll be even more.
It is, surprisingly, yes. And what is even worse is he's drawing considerable support from students and
exactly, yeah, that's
Black Americans. And why is it stunning, right? because Joe Biden is trying to get student loan cancelled.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court, which is a Trump nominated Supreme Court, is standing in the way.
Yeah.
And the young students are actually voting for Trump, all because of, Gaza. And I can understand if Trump gives a Gaza policy which is better. But Trump's Gaza policy is even worse than Biden. He is
Yeah.
a complete blind supporter of Israel than Biden is.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Of course, in the case of Ukraine, is slightly different, but I agree with you on the other one. Yeah.
and
Because
in
at
fact,
least,
he is telling Israel to nuke Iran's nuclear facilities.
exactly. Exactly.
So when people say, "Oh, I'm voting against Biden Harris because of the Gaza policy," and by the way, I'm voting for Trump, I'm like, "What are you doing? How can you explain that part, right?"
Yeah. What about the Indian friends? What are they doing?
Indians, by and large, are still supporting Democrats and Harris, but there is a considerable number of Indians, possibly, I think, maybe 20% or 12, maybe somewhere between 10 and 20% are supporting Trump. But this has always been the case, even in the previous one, and this comes down to a few factors. One, Indian Americans tend to think of themselves as, we are upholders of law as legal immigrants. And Trump's rhetoric on illegal immigration, they tend to like, irrespective of the fact that Indian Americans do use the labor of illegal immigrants. From household chores to many aspects, people use that. Right? So it's not like we are so principled that we say no to illegal immigrant labor, right? And that is one point. And the other thing is, Trump's Islamophobia attracts quite a lot of Indians.
Exactly. The same thing is happening in India. We use Bangladeshi laborers, but
Yeah.
still, yeah, yeah. All our household here in
So
Delhi.
Trump's Islamophobia attracts them, and some of Trump's attacks on Black Americans echoes in the Indian community also. And so it runs close to for many of those reasons also.
Yeah, but let me intervene now. As far as India is concerned, is Hobson's choice. Is between a rock and a hard place. Kamala Harris is not likely to be a friend of India, and she and Trump too. In spite of all those bonhomie between Trump and Modi, the hugging game and the it will be good for a television, but in actual relationship, I think it will be very tough. Be very tough. Whoever comes to power in the United States, it'll be tough for India to to play this, the game which they are playing now. It'll be quite difficult for India, both if whether Trump comes or Kamala Harris comes. But if Trump comes, one thing that might happen is that the Ukraine war might come to an end quickly. That might come to an end, so that one theater of what should I say, trouble might close. That might happen, and if Trump comes, one has to see. One has to see
Yeah.
that. So
The problem for
there's
Trump.
not there's not there's not much of a choice for India between Trump and
Harris. Absolutely, because Harris, though given her lineage, has the Indian heritage part of that, she is still an American, and she will
of course,
decide things
she
as
has to be an American. Of course,
and she will decide things as an American president,
exactly,
not as a Indian American, so to speak. So
exactly.
in that manner, she may not. What to say? There may be things that she will do which may not be in India's interests.
Yeah,
Certainly, this whole heritage thing plays out in very complex ways. And interestingly, one person was asking a question. I don't know how it didn't come up here. Is that is there truth in the some allegation that Israel's intelligence allowed Hamas to attack on October 7th, this is going back a little bit on one of our topics. There was no what happened was in a complete total breakdown of intelligence failure from Israel's side. They were complacent and they completely overlooked some of what was happening in the border, and they were taken by surprise. There is no, wanton complacency on behalf of Israel's.
I don't think there's a wanted complacency. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
because the price that Israel paid on October 7th
It's very high. No, I don't think
was
so.
is being compared to the
Yeah,
second.
but Netanyahu is using it to his advantage. That's a different issue.
Yeah,
But I don't think he could have, he knew this and he wantonly, he ignored it. I don't think it's right. I don't know. I don't think so.
and what is that? This is possibly a bigger failure than even the Yom Kippur War. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yom Kippur War. Yeah, Yom Kippur War. No, it turned to Israel's advantage fairly quickly.
Finally, but it
No, but
was
initially
also
it
an
was few
intelligence
days.
failure.
So initially few days. It's only a few days. But afterwards it turned very quickly to to
Yeah.
the favor of India, to the favor of Israel, and yeah, and Egypt. It became a total wreck in fact afterwards.
Yeah,
What happened to it.
Sadat
And
overplayed his hand.
Israel might become a wreck. After this war, nobody knows
Yeah.
what is going to happen. Yeah, I
So,
agree with you. This is
coming back
this
to
is a
the
much bigger war than the Yom Kippur one. And yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
coming back to the U.S. presidential election, the way I see it play out is, at this point, pollsters are at their wits' end. They don't know which way essentially it's a 50-50 thing.
Where the
There
cookie
is
crumbles, nobody knows.
nobody knows how the cookie will crumble. But
No.
what is perplexing people, particularly like me, is how can Trump become a candidate after January 6th, 2020? When, as a sitting president, he tried to overturn an election, which is
Yeah,
what you would expect
yeah,
in.
but that you will have to ask your own legal system. Your legal system has permitted him to
No,
run.
no, the legal system aside, how can people overlook the fact that here is a guy who used the power of the presidency to try and overturn an election, right? It is unheard of, and the peaceful transfer of power is the hallmark of a democracy.
Yeah, right, so my question is, as an Indian, as a ordinary Indian citizen, US citizen, so Trump's rightful place is prison. Okay. So
Whether it is prison
why
or
is
not,
he outside? Why is he now contesting for the presidency? So there is
so
something totally.
whether it is a prison or not, he shouldn't have been the nominee.
Yeah, but once there's nothing against him, which prevents him from running for the presidency. The party elects him because he is winnable. The party thinks he is winnable. It's happening everywhere. It's happening in India also. It's happening that the same way.
Yeah, and the way I see it play out is it'll come down to, like in 2000, famously Tim Russert, one of our legendary commentators, he wrote out on a small whiteboard saying Florida, Florida, Florida. The election will come down to Florida, Florida, Florida. This election will come down to Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. So every last precinct in Pennsylvania will be fought over. And because without Pennsylvania, Trump does not have a path to the presidency.
How
Kamala
many
Harris,
how many votes do they have?
19 electoral votes.
Is it that big?
It is that big. It is that big. And Pennsylvania is a very curious state because the western end is liberal, the eastern end is white and conservative. So it is, if you can appeal to Philadelphia, you may not appeal in Scranton.
Exactly.
So it is that kind of a very unique state. Pennsylvania is very unique that way. And the way I see it is, it's going to be a long night. We may not know the president for a couple of days, and at the end of which there will be some.
Yeah, but are you sure that is going to it'll come down to only Pennsylvania before that nothing will be decided? Are you
Mostly.
sure about that?
Again, nobody can be sure today with anything, right? Kamala Harris has got a few pathways to the presidency without Pennsylvania, but with Pennsylvania, her path becomes very easy. For Trump, without Pennsylvania, the path is extremely difficult.
Mhm.
Extremely difficult. So both have several pathways. Kamala Harris has got several pathways more reasonable. For Trump, without Pennsylvania, it is so much more difficult.
Yeah, but if Kamala Harris wins, let's say if she wins, it will be a huge plus point for I don't like it as a different issue, but it will be a huge plus point for the world's democracy. Okay, a woman becomes the president of United States, and
Mm.
again a woman from who is not Caucasian, no,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
becomes the president of United States, and it speaks volumes about the maturity of the U.S. democracy. Yeah. So it'll be a good
So
thing for the
let
world.
me ask you this,
Yeah.
right? So, what is it that you have against Harris?
She's she's a warmonger. No, she listens to the neocons in the in her the deep state, the neocon guys, the thug, or I don't know. Present day, I don't know. She may change now, but the guys. I don't know whether Blinken and all those guys. Some other guys will come there anyway in her cabinet. But today, nowadays, she doesn't inspire confidence in
So,
us.
the one thing is, particularly on foreign policy, right?
Yeah,
It is the president who decides it.
yeah.
Of course,
But
as a
she,
vice president, she is party to the decisions,
yeah.
and
But she,
part of the frustration that the voters have with Harris is they want to know how different she will be from Biden. This
exactly,
part, this part, she has not yet articulated very well.
exactly,
And
exactly,
and
exactly.
the reason that she is struggling with that part is because if she takes too much of a break with him, it'll appear disloyal and backfire. And at the same time, she is trying to differentiate herself, which is why, particularly on the Israel war, she has lent a more sympathetic view to the Palestinian Americans here. Of course, they will say, yes, she listens to us, but does nothing. That can be their complaint also.
Yeah, with Obama, same thing happened.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So
Yeah.
uh, there are complex things here at play. So how a Harris presidency will play out, particularly on the foreign policy, is not yet very clear. On the economic policy, she is showing some important distinctions that even Wall Street Journal says that she is showing daylight between herself and Biden's.
Yeah, but the trouble
But that is
is,
domestic. That is
let me say only, please bear with me for a minute. The trouble with the U.S. media is this, before she was elected, they consider her IQ to be that of a fruit fly. Yeah. So suddenly now she has become she may not be may not be an intellectual. She may not be called an intellectual giant. At least she has become the U.S. media consider her to be intellectually well equipped, and they try to give that
good point. Good point. So the thing is, her own presidential run in 2020, she withdrew from the presidential race before the first primary itself. In a way, if she becomes president, she would have become president without ever having won any primary election whatsoever.
But even now there's a case.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
If she becomes president,
yeah.
she
Exactly.
would have won. She would be the first president to have never won a primary.
Primary, exactly, exactly.
And but on the other hand, now people are re-evaluating as to, because when she flamed
No, but
out.
actually, Aravindan, you need to explain to the who is watching what the primary is. That's very
So,
important.
so primary is a intra-party election, right? So which is where, particularly for Indian viewers, they need to understand this, right?
Yeah, that's
Nobody,
a hallmark. The bourgeois democracy. From my
it's an
point of view,
intra-party
there's a
democracy where,
bedrock. There's a bedrock of democracy in fact. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's grassroots democracy where intra-party elections take place, and then they say this person will be the nominee of the party.
yeah.
That's how it happens.
It happens within the party, and it's a regular, voting. Yeah,
it's a
that's the
regular
point.
voting, and it's
Yeah,
huge elections happen and all of that.
exactly.
But
That's very important.
to your question about how come she is suddenly now the darling of the media, whereas she was written off earlier. The key thing is now people are also reevaluating how they wrote off earlier and what are they seeing now, right? And what is also being recognized is she was behind the scenes on a few things. Now, when she withdrew from the presidential race in 2020, she was facing a very different party. She lost against the progressives because Bernie Sanders was running, and she lost against the progressives. And also, let's remember, 2020, Democrats were so traumatized by the loss of a woman against Trump. And therefore, nominating another woman yet again, and that too a woman of color, was a bridge to. They were like, oh no, let's not do this now. Let's put a white guy at the top of the ticket just so that let it be between two white guys. So complex reasons happened, and Harris immediately withdrew. But what they are now saying is the party is different now, the country is different now. This is where, like, say, if you looked at George W. Bush, I was telling this to another person the other day. In 2000, when he was the nominee, the media mocked him. But when 9/11 happened, and looking at his response for 9/11, the media thought, here is a guy who understands Americans more instinctively. So the shift happens that way, right? Depending on what happens at the ground. And now there is a lot more about the personal story of Harris that is coming out. And I am seeing a lot of differences even between Barack Obama and her. And this probably I should do a completely separate program, hopefully before the election, going into why these dynamics are different and how the cookie may crumble. But let's move a little bit to. But right now the race is a complete dead heat, complete toss-up. Pollsters don't know if they are undercounting Trump supporters or are they undercounting Harris supporters. So it's all pie in the sky moment. It
Exactly.
is going to be a very long night, probably.
Yeah, but some of the some of the major units says the presidential elections, many thought it'd be close, and it turned out to be different in the history in the past. Okay, it might happen this time also. Nobody knows.
Yeah, we don't know. And there will be a lot of lawsuits, to be sure.
Exactly.
There will be hell of a lot of lawsuits
Yeah.
and lawsuits. And we have and this is a Trump Supreme Court. Earlier, in 2020, Trump filed close to 40 lawsuits in federal courts and the Supreme Court. Even his own appointed judges ruled against him in every case. So there is hope about the
Yeah.
law
That's it.
being upheld. But will Trump win it outright? There is a possibility, right? The electoral college system is still geared towards Republicans.
No, but we were not talking about his vice president candidate and the other guy, the JD Vance. How is he? So next
So
election,
J.D. Vance is a very curious case. He
he is going to
came
be the hillbilly.
Hillbilly Elegy. I have read that book. It's a very nicely
Yeah,
written.
yeah, yeah.
It's a very nicely written book. Back then, he used to be one of those Republicans who said Trump was a dictator. He called Trump a Hitler.
Exactly. He did.
Now he is singing a different tune, saying, "Oh, I learned more about Trump, and now I have begun to love him." And what is worse is now things are coming out about J.D. Vance's past statements about women and children and all of that stuff. Now they're wondering who was the guy who wrote Hillbilly Elegy.
Yeah.
That's the whole issue there, and let's see where that happens. And meantime, one question that came up is, and I don't know why it's not showing up here, but another question that came up is whether another world war is going to happen or not. Who would be the best fit for USA and the world? And particularly, the reader wants to hear your opinion. Who do you want to see lead USA and the world?
Between these two,
Anybody. Who do you think would have been a better choice?
no, I am not the person who makes the choice. The US citizens make the choice. But between these two, between Trump and Mrs. Harris, I said it's a Hobson's choice. It's not really a choice as far as India is concerned. But
Mm,
I would never in my dreams, support a guy, a thug like Trump. Okay, so by default, if Kamala comes, he's okay. He's okay for me.
mm, yeah. So let's see how this thing comes out. It is, and this is where we should shift a little bit to our
Oh,
final topic of the day,
yeah,
which is the state of democracy, right?
exactly.
And I'll say this, right? January until 2020, most Americans did not know what ratification of the electoral process is. We knew some ratification is there, electoral college is there, etc., etc. How states certify elections,
Yeah,
how the slate of electors are sent to the Congress for certification. Much of this was unknown, completely unknown, and nobody paid attention to it. Nobody knew, oh, today is when it's going to happen. But all of that changed in 2020 when a sitting president calls, for example, the state,
Pennsylvania, it's called Pennsylvania, I think.
he called the Pennsylvania Board of Certifying Board for elections, and he pressed them to say,
Exactly.
don't certify the election for Biden, who won the election in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Say that I won the election. And they go
exactly.
like, sir, we can't do that. That's illegal, and courts
Yeah,
will strike it down. No, 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 you go do that. You have the concept. He had people
but he
telling
said
him,
it openly. It's not that he's not.
none of this was done in secret.
Huh?
None of this was done in secret. And for the first time in my 26
Absolutely.
years in US, the state certification of results was simulcast on news sites, on TV stations. It
Yeah,
was crazy. What was supposed to be a very normal, simple, non-controversial issue. See, at least in 2000, right? In 2000, in Florida, barely 300 votes, 400 votes separated two presidential candidates.
exactly.
Here we are talking about 10,000 votes, 20,000 votes.
Yeah, no, I know that. I know that.
And not in one state. Remember, Al Gore and Bush were
Yeah,
fighting so much because it came down to 500 votes in one state
one state.
deciding the
Yeah,
presidency.
exactly, exactly.
Here, there are like
And
five.
they accepted gracefully. Al Gore accepted his defeat gracefully. He didn't.
He was very graceful, and Bush, in turn, was also graceful in certain other occasions. And which is where the democratic thing comes into play, right? In 2008, when Obama and McCain ran, and a financial crisis was threatening the very existence of the US stock market, Bush made an instruction to his administration officials. He said, one of these guys is going to sit in this chair tomorrow. They should know everything that goes on. There should be no secret between the campaigns. And I don't want any party favors. Every decision we take should be conveyed to Obama and to McCain. And he ensured that Obama campaign was very well informed. So much later, Obama paid a tribute to it. He said, in a difficult time, Bush put country above party. For him, the country was far more important than party. Supporting his party guy, he ensured that the next president came in fully armed with information. So this was the kind of transition that Bush was trying to do. And today, Democrats look back at the Bush era with some fondness, because for all the fight that they did over Iraq war and other things, you will remember all of that very well, about how Bush was called Hitler at that time, so on and so forth.
Oh, he
And
was.
Iraq war was the war of
Yeah,
choice,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
preemptive war and all. But today,
Weapon of
Democrats
mass
have
destruction, all those things are there. No?
Democrats have a different appreciation of
Nuclear
Bush
project.
as a person who respected democratic institutions.
Within the United States, yes.
And in this, I will cite one wonderful letter by Nehru before the 1951 election. He writes to the chief minister saying, in an election, we may possibly lose, and that's perfectly okay. That's
Yeah, he
part
said
of the
that.
democratic
Yeah,
process,
yeah, yeah.
right? When 2000 election happened, Time magazine actually wrote, the fact that we did not see battle tanks in the streets of Washington, D.C. is the strength of our democracy. At the end of the day, they went to the Supreme Court, they ended it there. Whereas on January 6th, 2020, we started seeing barbed
Yeah,
wire.
we have already discussed that. Yeah, we already discussed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
So
that's
very
what is Trump has brought this, this bad name to the U.S. democracy. U.S. democracy is the oldest democracy, in the world. Okay, so and his progress, was admired, even by the hardcore communists like Stalin.
yeah.
They used to admire how the U.S. How the U.S. used to run U.S. The, how people are free there. He has said openly. In fact, he has said that within
Yeah.
U.S. whatever happened, though it's a bourgeois democracy, all those things were there, but the
Mhm.
election electoral systems were free and things like this. That has been there for so many years. This was happening, especially after LBJ's,
Mm.
path-breaking reform, of the regarding the African Americans. The American elections were some of the is among the best, democratic elections that could take place from 1968 onwards or whatever it is. Okay, but all those things have been put on the back burner because of the shenanigans of our
Yeah.
friend
So,
Trump.
how do you see
Okay.
democracy from an Indian perspective with what is going on in India? Are
Yeah,
there, how is the respect for democratic institutions by the current regime?
exactly. That's the point. In India also, we should learn to respect the democratic institutions. We should learn to respect the democratic conventions. These conventions are there in a place for a reason. All these things are there in a place for a reason. So India also, we should learn to respect those institutions and respect those conventions. These conventions were unknown to India, and they were slowly brought in by our founding fathers, our country. Both
Mhm.
Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi was a Democrat, whatever you might say. He
Yeah.
wanted other franchise. He wanted democracy to be there. Okay. For instance, the conversion, conversion to another religion. He was not for it, but he never wanted a law to be brought here to.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It was very, very clear. In India, during those days, these discussions, they were very, very clear. So now the such things are being questioned. So there's a setback. Like there's a setback to the U.S. democracy. The BJP rule for the last 10 years. They have destroyed institutions and they have destroyed democratic norms more than everything else. The Indian right wing has used the the greatest tool of democracy, that is information system. Today,
Mhm.
that's the greatest tool of democracy. They misused it to spread slander, lies, and half truths. This misuse of this. This is the greatest crime by the Indian right. Okay, and the history will certainly notice it. Okay, and this is not going to continue. People will realize. People know that now. People know that most of the WhatsApp stories are all bunkum. People know that now. But the history is not going to forget these thugs. Who are even now they are doing it. If you go to Facebook,
The
they're spreading
undermining of
lies, they're spreading half
democratic
truths.
institutions,
Huh?
the undermining of democratic institutions is actually supported by many people, whether it is US or India.
Exactly. Yes, yes. That's another important point. Yes. Especially those who should know better.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially by those who should know better. They are doing it. That is the sadness.
It
So,
comes more from the
so I
educated
don't know
class.
where is liberal education. What is liberal education? I don't know. What sort of education these guys have.
Particularly from the educated professional class is where you find this support even more, particularly in India. The middle class educated professional class is more in support of undermining or even doing away with democratic institutions.
Exactly. They're very happy with that thing. They're very that is because I will tell you very very frankly. That is because most of them belong to the upper caste in India, and they feel that the upper caste hegemony in India is in peril.
Mm,
Okay,
mm, mm.
so that's why so far the Indian bourgeois, whatever democracy India had, it was protecting these communities.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they think instinctively as well as openly they think that their hegemony is in peril. Especially one more thing I have to say very very clearly and very bluntly, that for the first time, this issue was raised in the open again and again. Is being raised in the open again and again by Rahul Gandhi. He says very very clearly now.
Mm.
Okay, this is hurting these guys. This is the this sort of open confrontation, the open questioning of this hegemony
Mm.
is hurting these guys. That is why they want to, or what should I say? They want to sabotage
Undermine.
the Indian democracy. They want to not sabotage. They want sabotage is a big word. They want to undermine Indian.
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. They don't know how to do it. But they want to undermine the Indian democracy. One way of doing is to to spread lies, to spread falsehoods, and to slander institutions, slander personalities, rewrite history. All these things are being done. But I am quite sure the Indian people know better, and India will once again emerge as a very strong, vibrant, and functioning democracy. I have absolutely no doubt about it.
And
Okay.
on that note, let's have one final question. What do you think about the current elections in Jammu Kashmir and is it Himachal Pradesh?
Haryana,
Haryana.
Jammu and Kashmir. No,
Yeah.
the exit polls, of course, they predict a big victory for Congress in
Mm, mm, mm.
Haryana, and in J&K, the National Conference Congress combination to emerge as as they may form the government. One never knows. One never knows. But this is likely to be a setback to our great Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and the uh, the struggle between the inner party struggle in BJP, that will the struggle will sharpen. I'm sure the struggle will sharpen, and everyone knows now. In fact, I have been speaking to some of the RSS personalities,
Mm.
and the hate for Modi is to be seen to be believed. Is I don't know.
Mm.
They use such words which I thought they would never use for our Prime Minister. Okay,
Okay.
so the RSS Narendra Modi tussle will also
Mm.
will come to the fore. It may not come to the fore, at least that will also will become acute, and one never knows. One never knows.
And, and this is where I think probably we should finish off with the last line of Yeats's poem in that ends with what kind of a beast slouches towards Bethlehem, right? So we don't know how all of this is going to unfold, whether it is the US or this one, and it is
Yeah, but as I said, I have a great confidence in the people of of the world, people of the US and people of India also. They will, of course, they will uphold democracy. They will uphold genuine democracy. These are all short-term setbacks. I am quite sure. Okay, India will march
you are
ahead.
uncharacteristically optimistic for someone your age, but
Yeah,
then
I have always
you're younger in spirit probably, which is why you're more optimistic than people. Usually, as people age, they tend to be cynical or whatever. Optimism may not be the thing to
no. Yeah,
go,
I
but
have always been optimistic. I always say that the future, my next generation is better than mine. I am quite sure. Okay,
hopefully.
that's how the world works.
Hopefully, and on that note, I think we'll end. And thanks to the viewers.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
thank
sir.
you. I think we'll meet in the US. I will be there in the US and other.
Sure, we'll do something else, and probably
Yeah.
post-election we'll follow up with the
Yeah,
program.
we'll have another. Yeah, I will be in California. Yeah, we'll have another discussion. Thank you very much. I
Thanks,
think it will be good. I am quite sure. Whoever watched it, they didn't feel bored. I'm quite
I
sure about
hope
that.
so.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aravindan. Bye. All the best.